Hey folks, this is Jeff from This Week with JTT. As you can clearly see, I'm on my way driving. Where? Well, you got to take a wild guess though. Let's just say that I'm going to be really down. I'm going to be really, really down. Now, what do you think? So, come along with me and find out. Alright? Hey folks, we made it. So you guess where we're going? Well, have a good look. Welcome to Lincoln Caverns. We're going to do some cave exploring, also known as spelunking, if I said it right. And I hit the record. Intelligent. This is the blue card I have to start exploring the cave. Last time I saw a blue card like that, I was a kid and I was in trouble. Getting a blue card is always a bad thing. But for this, you're going to explore a cave. It's going to be one incredible journey. We're going to wait about 20 minutes and we should be good to go. About a few minutes, go for these doors. I'll probably go home right now. Well, in a few moments. Can't wait to check it out. But this is the souvenir shop. You see gems, fossils, pretty wild stuff. This is pure Indiana Jones stuff right here. You see shells of amorites, leaves. Incredible. You want to see what things look like? Oh, that's a trilobite? Yeah, that's a trilobite. Yep, that's a trilobite. And the irony is, like, the closest relative of these guys are the horseshoe crabs. Amazing. Well, time to go ready to get started with the tour. See you guys inside.
Today.
Have you been there?
Ever since it's been found, there's been a little under 30 people that have ever seen that half with their own eyes. I actually got my first chance about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And if you heard me talk about it before, I used to go, maybe someday we could. Now, being honest and really looking at it myself makes it very, very clear. It's not the sort of place you ever really see gets opened up to the public.
Okay.
That said, never say never. The weird thing about that map is we have two big chunks of cave connected by a single little shoestring. For caves like ours, that's not very normal, which means there's a very high chance there's more cave between those two that we just haven't found yet, including something that could be a completely different passage to get off to that other side. We just have to keep looking at anything that really looks promising. Now, for the time being, though, while we still can't get you guys back there, at least Now, before we head up, just a couple rules as well. I'm sure you guys will be fine, but just to get them out of the way, of course, no food or drink inside the caves. Try to stay behind me. You guys can start up here. I'll catch up.
Yep.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. And off we go. Oh, this is getting for real here.
Okay. So, with us gathering up here, you can see we're right outside Lincoln Caverns. This is the first of our two caves, found way back in 1930, opened up right away in 31. But where we're standing right now actually isn't the original entrance. The original entrance to Lincoln is actually way down that way. It's right by the side of the highway. Back in the day, the gift shop was across the road. So to get on our tours, we had to get across that highway on foot. As you can guess, when it gets real busy down there, that's not too safe. So in the 80s, somebody was nice enough to help us work through about 17 feet of limestone rock to actually get us this new entrance. Moved everything to one side, made it a whole lot safer. And actually, because of that, if anybody ever ends up with that need to touch, you can always get out your system right out here. Yeah, this stuff's just fine. It's just a spray-on concrete called gunite. Just put it here to hold the rock in place from where we crack through. Now, as we head inside, give your eyes a little bit of time to adjust. It is going to be a bit darker down there. And taller folks, we're going to have at least one low headspace to get through before we get into that first room. And if I could ask a little favor, whoever happens to get through the door last, if you could just kind of slide the door shut behind us, that'd be great.
And then we go. This is nuts.
Okay. So, our first stop right inside the door is a spot we call the mystery room. And we're actually doing things a little backwards right now because this is the last room found in the whole cave. A whole 7 years after the rest of it. The owner at the time, Myron Delnavy Sr., he was down in that room below and he took a digging bar, a lot like one of our rails here, and he actually just spent the day down there poking holes through the wall with it. Now, he wasn't doing this for no reason. It was an old way of exploring. See, if that bar of his hit something solid, he knew he found a big chunk of rock he couldn't crack through. But if it slid all the way in, he knew he found himself a nice patch of soft, squishy clay, and he could keep working his way through in hopes of finding a new space. Well, in 37, he did just that when he poked his head through the floor here like a little gopher, and when he looked up, he found the first mystery of the mystery room, which was right above our heads. He saw hundreds of bats staring right back at him. And I mean, that confused him for a bit. Both these bats we're going through now, they didn't exist yet. So when he saw all those bats up there, he had no idea how they even beat him here in the first place. It took him a little while to figure it out, too. I mean, as you look around, you have a lot of little cracks and openings all over the place. So, I mean, if you guys had to guess, which one of these would you say those bats were coming from?
Probably the door.
I say a hole somewhere. A hole somewhere.
The problem is we just have so many choices in here.
Gotta be a hole somewhere.
I think I'm seeing most people look in the right direction at least once. And if you're a bat and you're underground, what's probably the best direction for you to go if you want to get back above ground?
Straight up.
Just straight up. The one we're after is just that little tiny one right in the dead center of the ceiling.
Yep.
We call that a cave chimney, and that is the only natural exit to our first room.
Cool.
Now, that said, none of us are getting through there today. It's already pretty tight down here. But up at the top, the opening's still only about the size of a quarter. It is really tight. You probably wouldn't even notice if you were just right up on top of it. But that worked just fine for those bats that Myron saw. Full grown, the bodies of the bats we find down here are only about the size of your thumb. They're really tiny little critters. Now, I will say, we're probably not going to see a lot of bats around here today.
Right.
And not for the best of reasons. Over the past so many years, most of the bats in Pennsylvania were nearly wiped out. Heard of white nose before. I end up with some pretty mixed groups. For most of you guys that aren't so familiar, the short version, white nose is a fungus. Came over from Europe about 16, 17 years ago now. Gets in the bat's nose, makes this weird white fuzzy patch, and it just wakes them up out of their hibernation way too early. It's still freezing cold outside, there's no bugs for them to eat. Most of them just wouldn't make it to the spring. I mean, for the years it's been in the country, the whole American Northeast where this got started, we're still down about 90% of our total bat population. Literally millions lost.
Wow.
And around here, we're really no exception. We had, not a ton, but somewhere between 100, 200 bats we'd see in the caves about every single winter. And the first year the white nose hit us, we dropped from around 200 down to a big fat 0 where it sat for years. It was a clean sweep.
Wow.
That said, as the years have gone by, things have started getting better. White nose has left the area. The survivors out there have actually been doing pretty well, and we're even starting to see a few bats make their way through these old passages again. It's a great sign. It's just going to take a long time to get back up to those big numbers we had back in the day. So for us in the here and now, especially being the tail end of summer like this, we're still going to have to get really darn lucky to even spot one of our little bats down here today. Now, with that said, when you guys are ready, we can hit our first set of stairs here. Just take your time and use these handrails. This is probably the worst set of stairs you're going to see on the whole floor, so no hurry. So he wants to be brave and go first here, too.
I'll be the crazy one. I got a video record, so I gotta make sure that people do this right. Okay. Take your time stepping down. Some steps can be steep.
This is really the only spot in both caves that will happen. I'm not exactly sure what's going on.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. It's getting dark in here. Wow. Crazy. I love it. Ooh. I like that rock structure there.
I think, slide up just a little bit more. And down at the bottom of the stairs, it's not even for anything all that phenomenal, to be honest. This is the only spot we're going to stop in that has no formations in it at all. But it does make it a good spot to see a couple other things. Stuff that tends to hide underneath. For example, all around us we have a lot of this bluish gray rock. Most of the time it tends to smooth out, get more of the ashy gray color. Although this and this are the same thing. This stuff is limestone. And limestone's really important for our caves because it's actually what our caves are made of. This rock's going to be our walls, our ceilings, even our floors underneath all this fill. It is going to be everywhere we go down here. And honestly, limestone works great for making rooms and pathways like this underground. Although, the stuff you see in those rooms need a few extra ingredients. And the most important one of those is hanging out mostly right over your shoulders towards the middle here, with a few nice veins of a sparkly white crystal popping through. This stuff is calcite. And calcite's really just as important because it makes every one of the formations we're going to see today. Now that might sound kind of fishy. I know you guys have seen a couple formations. You know, most of what we're seeing, it's not going to be that bright glittery white. It's because there are other things I like to mix in there. Around here, it's usually a bit of our clay and sand. So the colors we'll actually find down here will vary a bit, but they tend to land somewhere between that really deep brownish orange and that really bright sparkly white. Now, there is one other thing I like to point out in this room. Not made of rock or mineral at all either. As you look around, you can see we have a lot of little strings coming out from between the cracks. And I mean, if you guys had to guess, what would you say these might be?
I gotta say, they're roots, looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tons of roots.
Bigger question?
From a tree, I bet.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what kind of plant would you say the roots go to? And we're sure that these are definitely tree roots. The reason we're so confident about that is the trees these go to, they're already over 20 feet above our heads from where we're standing right now. They're about the only thing that could dig this far down and around all this rock. Now, just like there's all different kinds of trees though, there's all different roots that go with them too. Even a few species up there that'll actually dig deeper in the ground than they climb up in the air. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll actually keep finding more of these roots all throughout Lincoln. Deepest I've ever spotted them around here is right about 90 feet underground. Pretty close to our deepest spot.
Cool.
Now, from here, we'll start making our way into this tunnel behind me. I do want to give you guys a bit of an extra warning, though. This bat's completely naturally formed and a little tight. You're going to see some rocks jump out from the sides, a few spots where the ceiling will dip a little lower again. Just make sure you can really see where you're going before you take a step.
Trick is just as simple as take your time walking through and you'll be fine. And watch your head. Definitely watch your head. If it's your keel and you can have a rough time in here.
So hit the other end of the passage here, we got our formations back, although we still have a bit of a problem. The biggest ones that you guys have kind of zeroed in on right away, we have some decent stalagmites, the ones that climb right up from the floor. But when you really look at them, you notice they're both really dry. Worse than that, they're all broken. They have all these chips and cracks running through them. The only reason they're really like this is because they haven't gotten a lot of these drips in a really long time. This water coming from the surface is super critical for every formation we see. It's what's dragging down those little bits of calcite crystal, carbon dioxide, really just everything it needs to keep getting bigger over time. So much so that when the water stops, so does our formation. And this is the biggest reason we ask folks not to touch the stuff they see down here. The longer things stay dry like this, the weaker they get and the easier they are to break. Now, that said, we'll see a few more dry spots like these two today, and it's really not the worst thing in the world, specifically when this happens on its own. I mean, take a look at the ceiling. There's still plenty of water getting in here. Most of it's just not going to the same place. So if you follow it back a bit, especially way off in that far corner there, you'll start seeing a lot of smaller, but really shiny and wet formations. That's where our water's going these days, and that's where everything's growing right now. And I'll be honest, that's pretty typical. Most caves you go to out there, formations don't really tend to stop and start, at least as often as they'll just change directions over the years. And they really will just follow this water wherever it goes.
Whoa.
Never quite ceases to amaze me how fascinated people get with that little ye old natural cinder block wall there. But stepping into this bigger room, you notice it wasn't alone. We have some weirdness going on around here. And there's a bit of a story behind it. This big spot we're standing in now, we actually call the lobby room. Because back before we had any kind of gift shop, this is where people used to come to buy their tickets before they went out to the rest of the cave. And it really wasn't a hard thing to do either. That big door over there that keeps making those sounds, that is that old entrance I mentioned outside. That highway really is just a few feet past the door.
Wow.
What a lot of folks don't tend to realize, though, even some of the people that used to come and go through there, is that we actually found the cave because of that highway. See, if you went all the way back to 1930, that little stretch of Route 22 you came in on today, it actually didn't exist. I mean, there was nothing out there at all. It was just more mountain and a bunch of trees. But it was right about that time they were trying to make a new roadway. And they wanted something big, wide, and most importantly, flat. And the only way to make that happen out here was by digging out a bunch of our mountains. So, as they're working on the new road one day, there was a steam shovel up there, an old machine that we're using to clear out rock, one layer at a time. And as it's working, the ground actually gave out underneath it. And that steam shovel and its driver, they were the first two things to ever enter this cave. Now, as far as we know, the driver was okay. There was still a lot of clay on the floor here, so it was a pretty soft, squishy landing. Steam shovel, though, was not so lucky. They actually took it out of here in bits and pieces. Either way, because of that huge hole they left behind, you can kind of imagine, for as big as this room is, it used to be way bigger, stretched all the way out to the other side of the road. So what we're actually looking at the moment is only half of what this room used to be. And when you break something like this in half, it takes some work to make sure that this part doesn't start falling apart too. So all the weird stuff we're seeing around here, the man-made walls, the beams above our heads, even some of that strange material way up on the surface, that was all put here just to give back that support we lost when the cave was first found. Now, that said, there's still some good natural structure left in the lobby. Mostly it kind of leads you down that way, which is where we're going to head to next, but it can also lead you off in this little corner. I've just got an extra warning for this one. At the end of this corner is a spot we call the Devil's Pit. Devil's Pit is a 16-foot pit. The only way into it is straight down. The only way out, straight back up the way you came. Feel free to check it out, but be really careful. Anything that falls down in there usually doesn't come back.
Okay, I'll check it out. Devil's. And what do? I check the Devil's Pit. Oh man. Wow. Whoops.
That's one of the reasons that all these
It's pretty deep. Wow.
We're kind of going through a bunch of glorified cracks that just were filled with that water for such a long time. We were able to open up those rooms and pathways.
That Devil's Pit looks pretty deep.
The stuff you guys are exploring now here.
But we still got more to explore.
The big thing they through is clay. We really don't break through a lot of rock because basically anywhere you start breaking through stone, you're very liable to end up in a situation like what we're seeing in this room. You never know what's holding what together down here. So you really don't want to break through rock if you can help it. So when we're exploring, we're digging out the other thing we find all over the place, which is just literal tons and tons of clay and sand that happens to fill up entire pathways and rooms that you wouldn't really even know existed otherwise.
If you don't mind me asking, you found stuff valuable like gold, precious stones, even coal even?
Not so much. Now, coal around here, of course, is something that you do find every now and then, but even Huntington County didn't have a lot of coal compared to some other counties. There was a very, very short coal boom out here compared to other places. And actually, Huntington County is actually considered by most people to be gem barren. Doesn't mean we don't have a lot of gems, it means we don't have a lot of variety. So you'll find a lot of calcite, some quartz crystal, a bit of mica, but really nothing much that's, exciting to take home. You can find gold in Pennsylvania, but around the Appalachians, compared to like places in the Rockies where the real gold boom and the gold rush happened, you don't find nearly as much. Even if you find a place that's pretty reliable to find a decent amount of gold, you'll be looking at maybe a chunk about this size for hours, if not days or weeks of searching.
Which is probably not worth the effort.
And honestly, you're looking for different pairing material too. A lot of the gold that I've ever seen anybody find in Pennsylvania is mostly out of sandstone substrate rather than limestone.
Okay.
The one thing you find in terms of geologic finds around here is fossils. Limestone and shale and whatnot, you can find some good fossils around here if you really have a sharp eye and you get lucky. It's just not things like dinosaur bones that people get excited for. At the point where all this was really happening and our rock was sort of fossilizing, we were still part of a really shallow sea.
Right.
Which means everything that you find out here in terms of fossils are things that lived mostly at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, yeah. That's wild. That's wild. But I bet you any amount of money must be pretty cool here during the hottest summer.
Yeah. For anybody that's not so well versed in caves, the temperature you're feeling down here doesn't actually change all year round. So this time of year when it's still nice and hot outside, this is a nice place to go. Also really nice in the dead of winter when it's freezing cold. This is a nice place to warm up then.
So it's warm here during the winter? Wow.
About 52 degrees all year round, which, seeing me going through without anything else, I always think feels pretty nice. Now I think that we're all finished with the pit. We can start moving forward again. Our next spot down here is what we call Wall Street Canyon. And at its absolute widest, it only ever gets to be about 4, maybe 5 feet wide. But at its tallest, there's a few spots that sneak up as high as 45 feet up. So once you're in there, make sure to take at least one good look way up above you.
You got it. Okay. Oops. Okay. Oh, you're not kidding.
This is great.
Ooh.
Water's great.
As we're kind of sliding in here, you might notice what makes this place feel a little extra tight. Both sides are completely covered in formation. A lot of this is actually something we've seen quite a bit of, though. Anywhere you find this stuff just running right down the walls, around here a lot of it kind of looks like melted wax.
Oop.
This is all flowstone. Probably the most common formation for both caves. We're going to see a lot more flowstone before we're done. But as we get deeper in, we do start picking up something new. We see more and more of these little dots coming off the sides. And they're a bit more rare. We call them cave beads, and they only form when the water evaporates off the walls. Usually, calcite just wants to go straight down, but when this water gets a chance to evaporate, it can pull a bit of the crystal out with it. Typically, just enough to get things started, so they can round out into these little beads we're finding all over the place. Now, there are a few other spots we can find some more beads, but I'll be honest, this end of the canyon, this is easily where most of them are found.
Wow.
This here.
Okay.
Supposed to. Go that way.
That one is going to be our way back. We're going to make a little detour here for a bit. And actually, hearing some voices down below, we're actually going to start crossing here. We'll talk about this little corner kind of as we head back up. But just to get us on the other side of this group that's going to be coming up this way, I think we'll just start moving, give us some space on the other side.
Okay. Oops. Okay.
Go right on the head across that other side. Just
Straight
take your
up?
time on the steps.
Straight up? Okay. Okay. Whew. I think this is about as far as we can go. I think we had a proverbial dead end.
You stay on the steps.
Off we go again.
This is the lowest one we're going to be going to today.
You two better stop jacking around on the steps, or I'm gonna mess you up. Someone gets hurt and kill you both.
yeah. I would hate to be Shaquille O'Neal in this place.
It's tricky.
Oh yeah.
Feel free to slide in until you find a spot where you don't have to crouch or anything, though. I know we got the room for it. And this spot down in here is actually one of my favorite stops for Lincoln. And there's a couple different things I'd like to show you guys. I guess the first thing that does just kind of stand out on its own, we do have one little formation that's already lit up for us there. That nice thin piece that's coming out the side. You guys can see those dark lines kind of going back and forth through the interior. Might sound silly to ask, but what do you guys say that looks like? Get a lot of seashells. What is that?
Fish.
Fish. I keep hearing it float around.
Bacon?
Yup. So, I get a lot of different answers for this, but honestly, the official name for this is actually cave bacon.
Ooh.
And bacon's a special one. Comes off the side
Yes,
in
it
those
does.
thin little strips.
Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, it's those
From
dark
here.
colors that really make the bacon bacon. It's that light dark. And as silly as the name sounds, it's used pretty much everywhere. Even if you go way out west, you spot something that looks a whole awful lot like that, they're going to be calling it bacon too. Now, for our sake, we're going to see a lot more bacon up in Whisper Rocks. So even if you don't have a good chance to see this properly right now, no worries. We'll see tons before we're done. For the time being, though, we don't call this the bacon room. We actually call this spot the purity room because of that formation out in front of
Ooh,
us.
okay.
Now, that is technically just more flowstone like we've been seeing everywhere else so far. But you guys can see how shiny and bright that surface is.
Yeah.
All that other stuff from up above, the clay, dirt, sand, rust, it's all kind of worked its way out, leaving behind more pure calcite. Now, this big spot in front of us is really good. It's about 80-85% pure, depending on where exactly you're looking. But if you look up to the left, there's a tiny little piece hiding up there over that lip. I usually mention it looks a little bit like snot.
Of course.
That's about 95% pure. So if you can imagine anything you find with that kind of color and shine, that's what formation tends to look like when it's just that calcite crystal. Now, before I do anything else here, I do have to ask a bit of an important question. Is there anybody here who has any problems with the dark?
No.
No?
No.
Be good? We might find out. Now, the reason I ask that is because when calcite gets this pure, it actually does something pretty cool. It becomes what we call phosphorescent.
Ooh. Awesome.
Yeah. And of course, that means that our calcite can hold on to the light a little longer, a little brighter than everything else around it. Now, right now, imagine you guys can guess, I do have some black lights and all this.
Of course.
It's the same reason we get a little closer. Some of our clothes give off a bit of glow too, especially socks and shoes. Those are usually good targets. Although this stuff's a little different. Any shiny stuff we have on us is usually just fluorescent. And the big difference, when light goes out, our fluorescent stuff just disappears right back into the dark. But this stuff in our calcite works a little differently. That is actually going to keep glowing all on its own for just a little while and then fade out. And that's exactly what we're going to try next. So, best way I've found to show this off, I'm going to count to 3. On 1, I suggest you close your eyes. And then on 3, open them back up and focus in on really whatever spot there you think is the brightest. It is going to be really darn quick.
Okay.
Everybody all set?
Ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. It is fast. Now, I can actually make that last a bit longer, but to do that, I have to get closer. So let me go ahead and sneak around you guys for a second. Let's see. Oh, that's perfect. No worries. If you guys had any trouble, that's actually why I do this. See, it's really hard to lay out the whole formation under my little handheld. But what I can do is I can get right up next to it and under a bunch of layers right away. Now, it's still not going to last forever. The longest I've ever had a spot last year is about 10 seconds. But it's long enough that you won't have to close your eyes for this one.
Ooh, okay. Yep.
If you let your eyes wander, you can see it's still going.
Yep.
Just about gone.
Yep.
Not too bad. Now, this means you do some fun things with this spot too. For example, somebody shout out a letter. Any letter.
P.
We got a couple of B's, I think.
P.
Oh, get out of here. You gotta be kidding me.
I'll be honest, when I first got down here with this handheld, I probably spent hours drawing all sorts of things. This spot is so good at this. Yeah, we've even started doing a couple of blacklight tours through our caves, because while this spot's great for this, the rest of our caves are honestly not too bad either. You can actually guide your way through here really well, using nothing but black lights, and the bit of glow you get off of most of our formations. That said, this spot sitting beside us here, this is still probably the best spot we have for this sort of thing across both caves.
You want more? We want
Probably
to see
do
it.
that.
We want to see the heart.
Probably be a little lopsided, not great at these.
Yeah.
It's not bad, better than I thought it'd be. Now, with that said, I do want to give you
Yes,
guys a
we're
little
in
bit of
total
time with
darkness
this.
now.
So if I ask a favor, whoever's got cell phone lights out, try to cover up that light as much as you can just for a little bit. Yeah, because with our lights gone, we end up in something called total darkness. And total dark's a little different than the dark you get in your rooms at night. See, no matter how long you stood down here, normally your eyes would never adjust to see anything, because typically there is no light in this room at all. So if you can find a good spot where you can't see anything right now, this is actually what our whole cave looked like to us 24/7 without some kind of light to help guide us through. And I think I'll go ahead and fix that problem. Just gotta sneak back around you guys. We'll fix this in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, wow. Right.
Bit of a switch. Now, you guys can see we can actually
Right.
get down a little deeper here. I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys lead the way on this one. Just take your time on the stairs. And you can see there's a couple different ways to go down there. Go whichever way you like. You get a good chance to check them all out before we're done. It's no big hurry. Especially with a big group like this, it helps out if you guys want to split in different directions. That way you don't all end up crushing together in the same spot.
Come here, right? Right, come here. Yeah, let me see if it. Okay, I think it worked. It probably just gives the hint of the injury. Yeah. Oh, that's cute.
See. Now I know how minor feels. Oh. Okay. Wow. Okay. And this is where we at. Okay, picture being on minor. Try to dig in here. Yep. See a small hole right there. Crazy.
It's interesting. We were talking about this the other day because we have some discussion with like the Department of Agriculture, but they don't specifically require. Technically, we're one of only 2 states that actually have cave inspections. It's us in Texas. So we do actually have somebody that comes and checks out the space. Usually it's every couple of months, about 4 times a year. And honestly, of course, being a weirdly specific job, it's always the same person. So we know him pretty well, and honestly, he knows the caves pretty well. The only place I've ever seen him spend a lot of time is back in the lobby room, where there's a lot of that structure that's been changed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, see, here's how they got to walk. The way they have it made. That way you won't slip or fall.
Oh, yeah.
Real smart. Wow. Oh. Whoops. Okay. Okay. See. This water? Yep, it's water. There's a pond here in case you're wondering. And there's more water over here too. Must be drip water. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Eventually the water guy goes somewhere.
Wow. Okay. Oops. Whew.
Go. So as we're kind of starting to gather back up again, I do want to mention something real quick about that spot to the right you guys checked out.
Oh yeah.
I know there's not a lot down there by way of formation, but I do like pointing people down that way. At the very, very bottom, that is the deepest part of both caves you're actually going to be able to get to today. Right by that bottom rail, you end up about 115 feet underground. And the reason we can't get any deeper is because of that water you were seeing down there.
Yeah.
It's actually not just a puddle, that stuff's groundwater. What that means for us is that we did try to get deeper around here. Even if we worked together and made a big hole by our feet, once we hit that level back over here, our hole's probably going to fill up with water too. That's about as deep as we can get around these parts, at least without cracking through a lot of hard bedrock way underneath. Now, since we can't get too much deeper, that also makes this a pretty good spot to start making our way back up. You'd be amazed how many times we've had to mention this though, so I just say it all the time these days. If anybody had to duck to get into this room, please duck on your way back out too. Something down there I'm going to appreciate the next tour I bring down here.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
They would not be too happy about that.
Yeah. There is ventilation down there, it's just not very fast. Anyways.
And it was just going to linger for a bit.
Well, we'll get some distance here. I do want to mention real quick, just take your time with this tunnel back. It's another one of our tight ones. And the rock in here is a little more rough than we've seen elsewhere, so no hurry.
Okay.
That's fine, okay.
What are you, 90?
Alright, let's open that.
I thought so.
You guys can slide out a bit here. Make sure we didn't lose anybody down below before we go anywhere else.
Got it. Okay, this was, I see no light whatsoever.
So popping out over here, does anybody know where we are right now?
Not a clue.
Back up to the entrance.
Yeah, some of you guys work this out. Usually the answer is inside a cave, but we've been here before. If anybody's still a little lost, this is in particular where we first talked about our tree roots, that calcite crystal. Now one big circle through the whole place. So these are those big stairs we came down at the very beginning too. Remember we have those rough ones right past the turn, but when folks are ready, we're going to start making our way up from here, meet up outside, see about heading up towards Whisper Rocks.
Sounds like a plan. And we're about to go to daylight. Woo! Ah. Woo, feels muggy outside. Oh. That was not too bad. That was enjoyable. Very enjoyable.
This would be the worst part of the tour sometimes. The path up to Whisper Rocks isn't very long, but it is kind of steep. Because of that, there's no rush. We'll kind of head up at our own pace here. Once we're up there, I think we'll talk just a little outside before we head down.
Okay. What's the little time I have left? Go straight to the highlights.
So, while we're kind of catching our breath up here, you can see we did make it. We're right outside Whisper Rocks. Opened up way later than Lincoln. Although the site up here is kind of misleading. It was actually found back in 1941 by Myron C. Dunleavy Jr. And that name might sound kind of familiar. I mentioned Myron Sr. down in Lincoln. He was the guy ran the other cave down there throughout most of the 1930s, 1940s. Junior was his son. And as a kid, he spent a lot of his free time out here, just hiking up and down this mountain. Well, there was one day over the winter, after this big snowstorm, he was going along the top of the ridge there, and he found this big spot on the ground where all the snow had just melted away already. See, temperature in our cave really doesn't change all year round, which means in the winter, sometimes that heat can rise up and actually melt out a bit of snow and ice from underground. Now, Junior, he lived around here most of his life. He already knew about this. So as soon as he saw that spot, he grabbed himself a shovel, he dug right into it, and it didn't really take him long to find a nice sinkhole that went way down below. And that got him really excited. He ran right down the side of the mountain we just came up. He found his dad and said, "Hey, I think I found another cave." And Myron Sr. just kind of shook his head at him and said, "We already have a cave." For what it's worth, his dad just didn't think it'd be worth all the time and money that usually goes into opening up a whole new space. So for 3 years, Junior, who was still just a teenager at the time, he actually dug into that sinkhole by himself before he finally broke through into the rest of the cave down below. So our next cave right here was actually found from start to finish just by Myron Jr. as a teenager. I almost can't imagine that today. With that said, if anybody needs a little extra time out here, no hurry. But when we're ready, we can always start making our way down in. We do have a little staircase right inside that door though, so watch your step right away. And again, whoever happens to get through last, if you could just kind of slide the door shut behind us, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yes. You can go ahead.
Here we go to Whispering Rock. Well, the stairs are steep. Whew.
I'm going to do our pirates a little favor here. Because I hear their voices down below, so I know they're coming. We'll grab this on the way out. If anybody's a little confused, that's just a trash bag. But those pirates are on their way to finding treasure here.
Uh-oh.
So I wanted to make sure it was all uncovered and ready for them to see when they get back out. So rather than be close to where those guys are going to be gathering, we're going to start this way. We'll probably check out that little spot on our way out after they've kind of cleared out of here.
Pirates? Where's Indiana Jones when you need him?
So before we go around the bend here, there is actually something in this first little corner that I think a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with. This tunnel that's sitting out in front of us is actually the tunnel. It's the one that leads off to that other half of Whisper Rocks. And you can see it's really not that hard to get into. It's only once you get around the bend that it starts getting tighter and tighter into that belly crawl. And I'll admit, even without that crawl, it's not an easy place to get in and out of. The first room you finally get into, where it does open up again, is full of these tiny little delicate formations. They're gorgeous, but most of them love to grow right across the middle of what you would want to be your path. So it's going to be a long time before we can even really consider getting that spot open to the public. It's a shame, but I'll be honest, that is a bit closer to the way a lot of wild spaces around here tend to be. And there's a lot of them out there. In Pennsylvania alone, there's about 8, 9 show caves like ours. Really only 7 of us that are open full time. But if you include all the wild ones people have found, the number jumps up to about 1,200. It's a lot of caves. Wow. I mean, if you guys ever get the chance to do some wild caving someday, I really do recommend it. Especially if you don't mind a tight squeeze here or there. Just bear in mind, it is a very different monster from what we're doing today. Yeah, you never want to get into any kind of wild space unless you have all the gear you need, at least a good couple of people with you that really know what they're doing. That said though, there is still a lot to see on this half of Whisper. Around this corner, this whole next passage is basically just a big mishmash of all the different formations we've been talking about, plus still a few others. So as we go through here, feel free to take your time, stop, look around, take pictures. There is so much to see right around this bend.
Gotta let another 2 of them go past us before we go forward. One guy dressed like a pirate. I think they're treasure hunting. Interesting. Wow, crazy.
seems silly to be protected with the things that seem to be a lot stronger. And to be fair, a lot of these things sometimes end up even stronger than the rock it came from. Unfortunately, us humans, we're just really oily creatures. We leave a little bit behind on everything we touch. Typically not a big deal, but everything down here grows because of water. Oil and water don't mix. If we touch the stuff too much, it really builds up. And it just blocks the water off from connecting the way it should. So we still try to be really careful either way. Now back around here though, I'm actually going to give you guys a little bit of time to explore the spot on your own. But before I cut you loose, there are two things I'd like to point out real quick. And of course the first one's really easy to see under these red lights. On either side of us, we have these two big formations that connect all the way from top to bottom. These are called columns, just like when you find them in buildings. But they are what you get when those stalactites coming down and your mites coming up finally come together into one big piece. Now, if you remember a lot of the stuff we saw in Lincoln, this was one of those formations we didn't actually come across. Even right next to each other on the same mountain, two caves can end up very, very different from each other. And you never actually know what you're going to find until you get down inside. Now, on top of that, I also like to point out another little opening. And this time, it's actually just that little one on the far wall back there. It really doesn't look like much on its own. But that is actually the other end of the sinkhole Myron came through to get into this last room. After 3 years digging by himself, looking around at this whole place for the first time, he remembered it as one of the best days of his entire life. Especially this room. He saw the hundreds of stalactites over our heads, these big formations sitting all around. He actually said that this spot here reminded him a lot of a chapel. So much so, we actually named this place the Chapel Room. Now, a few years after he found it, we actually held a church service right here where we're standing. But that was back before the door we came through today was opened up. So everyone who came and left that day, they came and left through that same little sinkhole right up there. Now, beyond all that, this is actually our last room for Whisper. So like I said, I'll give you guys some time to explore this little spot on your own. If anybody's got any other questions for me though, feel free to ask. We're ready to head back. We'll just meet you right around here.
This is second column?
Yeah. Yeah. Those two are both columns. That one between the two is not quite. It's kind of an anti-column. You notice that's more limestone than actual calcite.
Ah, yes. Wild.
So is that tunnel area the only other area you guys are exploring at this point?
We don't even really have any active dig going on. That other side definitely interests us because from what we found already, we're sure that there's more. Like, quite literally so. There are passages that we just really haven't gone into all in that space. It's just hard getting in and out and making any sort of digging progress. Because even though we're only working with clay, you imagine trying to clear out a passage, you fill up a bucket full of clay, you do it. You're backing out that 75-foot crawl.
Whew, okay. Wow. Second column. Ah, okay.
That little pipe hanging out in the corner there?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I'm like, what the?
It's for emergencies. It's actually got a bunch of glow sticks inside it, just in case the lights ever cut out, if we need something to help find our way back outside.
Thankfully, we got cell phones. That's a big help.
Yeah, at this point, everybody kind of carries their own personal lights, so it's usually not too much of a concern. But we have it there just in case.
Oh, understood.
Especially for, you saw that birthday party. You never know whenever you get the groups that have a lot of kiddos.
I can see where the bats could be hanging out up there easily.
I've always been told, I've not been here long enough, but pre-White Nose, the majority of the bats that live in our caves actually lived up here in Whisper Rocks. Actually to the point where even other wildlife started to figure out what they like to do. You'd see an active population in the summertime, and I was always told that snakes would hang out close to the surface and would try to snatch them as they went out to hunt at night.
So you got a little ecosystem here.
There always is. Losing bats, turns out bats in a lot of these places in North America were actually a pretty critical part. That's why a lot of things are really out of balance. One of those little guys, when they go out to feed at night, very efficient hunters. They can take care of about 1,000 bugs over the course of an hour. So think about how many bugs that equals out to losing millions of those bats. We definitely want them back, even for folks that are not huge fans of them. Let me go ahead and sneak around you guys one last time here. I'm going this way. Now, as you head back, I'll go ahead and give you a tight fit. I know some of you guys already know what I'm heading towards, but if anybody missed it, if you're not a fan of small spaces, I recommend going down the other side, just the way we came from earlier. I'll meet you right on the other end.
Of course, I'm not being one crazy to take that challenge. How much heavy behind can fit for those keyholes? Oh, here we go. Oh my goodness. Shaquille O'Neal will never make it for here. Never. Never. Don't try this at home. It was tight. We had worse. Oh. It's quite an adventure though. Quite an adventure. I'm enjoying this.
You keep touching the wall there.
Try not to. Okay. Up the stairs one more time. Oh. Into the muggy air. Whew. Whew. That was fun. That was so fun. Gotta do it again soon. Yeah, that's not disconcerting. Gotta check that sinkhole and get moving. Home. Tired. Hungry. Whew, but I had fun. I had fun. Okay. And this is the sinkhole that Junior has found. It's kind of funny. A teenage boy made a name for himself by finding a cave on his own. That's cool. That's so cool. Well, for nothing, everybody else can do what they want. I'm gonna see what this sinkhole trail is gonna lead to. Hopefully, it leads me back home. Well, back to my car. Let's see. What do you think? Should I go home or should I just go to the part that says sinkhole trail? Let's see how far it goes. Go so far if I'm saying I'm done. Let's go. See where this trail goes. I only got about 5 minutes worth of video left. I was video recording like crazy. Then again, I think I recorded some stuff earlier. To get another phone, I need a bigger space. If you're gonna video record like you're Peter Parker or something. I hear cars. I know we're by 22. It sounds relatively close. So I think I'm not too far. I'm going home. Must have been a crick that hit my arm. It flew. Yeah, I see the other group of people here. Yep, I think I was there. Alrighty. I can say this, folks. That was quite an adventure. Quite an adventure at the Lincoln Caverns. I probably gotta come back again. I want to load up on souvenirs next time. So there's two places I gotta go back to: Lincoln Caverns and Living Treasures. I want to load up on souvenirs, lots of souvenirs. But first time being back there, about 15 years. I'm not gonna lie, I had fun. I was a little tired of all the walking around, but all the walk up and down the caves and all down the trails. But you know what? It was worth it. So I recommend your friends and family go there. I'll put up the website and phone number for Lincoln Caverns, and it's a grand old time. It's a grand old time. So hope you enjoyed it. And you know the deal. Like, share, thumbs up, hit that bell for notification. Hope to see you soon, folks. Thank you. God bless and peace.